Hey there. Here's an overview of the project to take a scrap Moog Taurus 1 circuit board and turn it into a MIDI controlled sound module with all of the features of the original Moog Taurus 1. And here it is. It's basically mounted in a custom case with wood sides. It's got a MIDI output and some other things which we'll explain shortly. Um, Basically, it's got all the settings. We've got the variable setting, the Taurus setting, the tuba setting, and the bass setting. And then with those presets, you can control the glide on and off, the decay on and off, and the octave high-low. Also, you've got two foot wheel controls that control the loudness or the volume, and then a filter cutoff control, which will control the filter cutoff for any of the presets. The variable preset has sliders, which allow you to control the mix between oscillator A and B, all of the volume settings for attack, sustain, and decay, and then the filter settings, which allow you to control the filter based on contoured attack and decay, plus the actual cutoff frequency and emphasis. And there's a glide control, so you can glide between different notes, and this is the time between glides. The tuning control will allow you to fine tune to obviously the key of C, and a beat control, which allows you to fine tune the frequency of one of the oscillators so that they beat together and make a nice phasing sound, just like the original Taurus. And that's the front panel. And I'll show you the rear panel in a second. So here's the rear panel. We've got an on and off switch. We've got a small voltage selector so that this can be used in Europe at 240 volts or in North America at 110 volts. There's an audio output with a output level control and an IEC connector for power. The most important thing for this one is the actual MIDI in jack. There's an internal Midi to contact closure circuit board that allows Midi to trigger the Taurus pedals like you were pressing the foot pedals on the original T1. And this is a picture of the rear panel, which is basically an aluminum panel that closes off the case nicely with 4 rubber feet to keep it from sliding around. So, with the cover off, you can see the Moog Taurus 1 circuit board in its full glory. I had to fabricate a custom power supply based on the Moog schematics and the Moog PC board layouts. So it's basically a recreation of the Moog power supply that gives you plus 15, minus 15, and plus 5 volts. So this is a brand new fabricated power supply with the proper Molex connectors and whatnot. The rest of the power circuit starts with the IEC connector, where your 110 or 220 volts comes in, and there's a transformer that has multiple primaries that allow you to use this small switch to switch between 110 and 240 volts voltage input. So this could actually be used also in the UK or North America just by switching this switch. So power goes through the power switch into this voltage selector, through a couple of 1/8 amp fuses into the transformer, and then the transformer output comes into the power supply, and it's rectified, and the voltages are regulated to this connector here. So that's the power circuit. Now, as you can see, this is a real Moog Taurus 1 circuit board. There's certain modifications that have to be done because there were a lot of missing parts. A lot of the variable sliders here that are underneath this board had their handles broken, so there was no way to move the sliders because the handles were broken, and a lot of those were rebuilt. Had to replace capacitors, had to replace integrated circuits. A lot of transistors were missing, especially these special FETs. and some of these transistors were also, or op amps were also damaged or missing. Also, I replaced all of the plastic carbon potentiometers with ceramic metal types. That's what these blue trimmers are. And they allow me to tune correctly to Moog factory spec, tune the unit to factory spec so that all of the sounds are correct and they're all tuned correctly. And there's different tuning controls here for oscillator 1, or oscillator A, and for oscillator B, and then all the trimmers to make sure all the sounds sound exactly correct. All of these outputs for switches go to the front panel switches, and then you've got the outputs for LEDs also go to the front panel LEDs. Back here underneath the circuit board, there's a J and W omega parallel, a Midi to parallel converter that takes a Midi input and gives you contact closures that I am driving read relays, and the read relays press or close the contacts on these two connectors, just like the contacts would be closed when you were pressing a Moog Taurus 1 foot pedals. So that's simulating closing these contacts using this small read relay circuit board that's being driven by the J omega Midi to parallel circuit board, which is under here. And that gives me Midi capability on this, so I'm able to drive all of the sounds of the Moog Taurus 1 board using a Midi input, which is really cool because you can use anything you want to drive this. You can use Roland PK5 pedals if you want, or you can use Fatar pedals if you want, or you can use a normal keyboard to drive the sounds, which is really good in a studio situation when you might not have foot pedals, or it might be more convenient to use a keyboard. So that's the circuit board. You can see how I've attached these wooden sides here, and really there's not much more to say except there was a lot of damage to this board. There's places where you can see here where it looks like somebody drilled through the chassis in the original T1 here, and there's other places where a drill had gone through and damaged some of the traces. Don't know how that could possibly happen. Might have been an accident of some sort, but that's what caused this board to become removed from the original Taurus 1 and basically designated as scrap. And that's how I got it. And I figured, hey, it's worth a try to get this back to the sounds that it was capable of, because this is a very valuable board. And trying to recreate this under any circumstances is a daunting task, because a lot of these components are not available anymore, and they wouldn't be laid out the same, and it's difficult to get the same sound unless the layout is exactly the same. So I was very happy to purchase that and to get it going. So here's the part that we've been waiting for, the module audio test. And what I'm using here is just a simple Rock Band 3 battery-powered keyboard, because it's handy, doesn't need power, just needs MIDI out. And the MIDI out is going to the MIDI in of the Taurus 1 module. And then I've got audio out, which is being direct fed to the audio mixer, and with my mic audio. And we can give her a quick test. As shown before, we've got the 4 presets: bass, tuba, Taurus, and variable. And for those presets, we have glide, decay, and octave settings. And then we have a filter, which is basically the filter cutoff frequency. And we have loudness, which is just basically a volume control. And then we have the program preset window, which allows you to have custom settings for all kinds of ADSR and filter settings and tuning and octave settings for the variable preset. So let's start with the filter up, loudness up, and we're going to start with the bass. With a little bit of decay. Without decay. And octave is available there. And we can also apply the filter to it. And volume goes to about 90% of the volume. And so there's the bass setting. And just like the original Taurus 1, I've got high C to low C, plus a whole bunch of other octaves available because we have this octave switch, and for the variable we have a low, medium, and high octave switch, which gives you many octaves. So let's do the tuba without the decay. And then with the decay. The octave. And then the Taurus. This is the one we've been waiting for. Oh yeah. That's with decay on, with decay off. So the note doesn't have decay once you stop the trigger. And the octave works here as well. And the filter works here as well. And there is a minimum trigger time, so if you try and trigger too fast, you're faster than the decay circuitry, so you don't really get the abrupt note stop where if you start to re-trigger a new note. Turn those off. Now we'll go to the variable setting, which allows us to use all of these functions. We've got loudness contour, and we've got filter contour, and we can adjust the attack and decay for the VCA and for the VCF. There's two oscillators. We're going to just look at oscillator A right now. Very simple oscillator, oscillator B. So now I've tuned A to B to be the same. And as I said, and then one higher if you hit the octave button. So it's a huge range. It's like five octaves total. And we'll just go to the medium, and we'll mix the two oscillators. And then I'll try and tune them. So that's with oscillator A and B in unison. And then oscillator B tuned to a fifth. And then octave. Then we can adjust the attack. Sustain level. So sustain is low. Sustain is high. And then if we put the decay on, we can control the VCA decay. Then we can control the cutoff frequency. We can do that here as well. These two are in series, so you can control the filter here. And the emphasis. There's all kinds of whistling sound. And then the contour amount, contour attack, contour decay. And if you adjust the beat frequency, you can adjust the phasing between the oscillator B and the oscillator A. This beat frequency adjusts oscillator A frequency very, very in small amounts. So you can get minimal phasing or a maximum phasing. If you turn it all the way up, you can see it's phasing at a higher rate. Usually I put it at 2.5. It's a nice sound. And the only other thing is the glide, which will glide between two notes, high and low. So if we turn the glide on and we have glide high, and go even further. So it doesn't go directly to a note, it glides, and if we have a minimum, then no glide. But if you put a little bit, makes it kind of interesting. Well, there it is. Taurus 1 MIDI control module. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed playing it. And I'm going to go right back to it. Thanks. Take care.